Yes.
Did you ever find, read a lot in the monthly again, that Mary Whitehouse and other critics, did you ever find that they were justified? Like when you went back and saw the program, or just as you
No, I don't. I think Mary Whitehouse was idiotic about it. I'm not a gamester per se at all. You know, I don't think it's a bad idea to have somebody to keep a general eye on the morality of television. I think it's quite a good idea. But I think so frequently, to me, goes right over the top. Certainly does in the United States now, having been very carefully in every sense of it, now it's just mad. I mean, I get shocked myself. I think, well, what the hell am I looking at? I want to think you're in some blue movie house, you know, down on the 42nd Street. You can't believe what you're seeing in American television now. And I disapprove of it. So I think in a way, it's quite a good idea that you have somebody like Mary Whitehouse keeping a sort of watching brief. But when you think that Mary Whitehouse actually said that Doctor Who was the most violent program on television, and she didn't just say that just off the cuff. She went into it very, very carefully. And she had lists of things which she said made it that violent, and she sent them to the Director General of the BBC. And she said that binding somebody is violence. Well, of course, Doctor Who never stops being tied up. You know, being tied up, or Joe, or Sarah, they're always being tied up or strapped to a railway line or something like that. So that was considered violence. If you remember my famous Venusian Aikido, well, that Venusian Aikido was taught to me by Teddy Walsh, my stuntman, I've mentioned to you before. And this was, I never attacked anybody. It was only people who attacked me, and I took them and did marvelous things with them. Threw them, you know, mainly because they were jolly good jumpers. But I didn't attack them, so that wasn't really violence. That was me protecting myself. So it's a lot of rubbish. Doctor Who was never a violent program, and it may have been later the people who took over from me. I don't know. I haven't watched it that much, so I don't really know. Yes, sir.
Has there ever been a role that you've refused because?
Would you speak up?
Has there ever been a role that you've refused because you didn't like?
Has there been a role that I've refused?
Yeah.
Oh, sure, many, but that's only because they didn't pay enough. No, I've never refused a role actually for moral reasons. With luck, I happen to have liked most of the roles I've been given. In the main, of course, I play light comedy, and so it's unlikely that you're going to object to light comedy. I mean, you turn it down if it's a rotten play or rotten film, or when you don't like it for that reason, but that would be the only reason why I turn it down. Yes, sir?
Yes, you mentioned in passing you don't particularly care about Dr. Dallas, you find it rather boring. Did you ask for any particular kind of monster when you began the role, and are there any of the recent monsters you would have liked to have gotten a crack at?
No, I have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the decision of monsters. I must explain why. You're working under such colossal pressure that we at one time used to do one Doctor Who per week and record it on the Monday of the following week. So we'd rehearse it and record it all within 7 days or 6 days, because we didn't work on Sundays. And we only worked on one Saturday. Every alternate Saturday we wouldn't work all day, we'd only work on half a day. So that's not long to put on a show of Doctor Who's quality in 1 week. Now it so happened that the technicians used to break the setup after the recording of the show, and because they were paid overtime, they were on a different wage scale, they were paid overtime for working night work. I used to finish recording about 10:30, and I'd go and have a drink after I'd taken my makeup off, and then I'd pop my head into the studio just to see if any of my friends were still hanging around there. And frequently the set would have been gone in 1 hour. But those men were paid to work all night. And the BBC knew this, and they knew they were being ripped off, but they couldn't do anything about it. But what they could do was to object very strongly that because of the speed they worked, they tore the sets down so quickly that they just broke them and wrecked them. So after a bit, we did them every fortnight. So we rehearsed 2 shows and recorded 2 back to back. By that you can see this was a very, very high pressure to be under. So I had no say in what was being written, because this was being written months before it got to, I would be recording, say, The Planet of the Spiders, and there'd be another story been written by 2 other writers, and the new director would have been found, and he'd have been working on it, and he'd have been casting, but he would have rung me up at home, and he said, now we've got this thing, we've got this case. He'd send me a rough storyline and say, who do you think for this, this, and this, anybody you'd like, and so on. So we talk about the casting. But I'd have nothing to do with the writing of that story, so we all had to rely completely on the producer. In my case, through most of my time in Doctor Who, is Barry Letts. So I'd have to rely on him. And when he said it's a good story, I'd accept it. But on the Monday, on the first day of rehearsal, the Monday, I would go through that script very carefully with the rest of the company, and if we didn't like anything, particularly, we thought that dialogue was too long, or that scene was too long, or that scene was too short, then we would rewrite it on that very first day of rehearsal. And after that first day, we'd never altered a thing. Because if you went on altering it, you'd never get the thing in the can at the end of a week. Okay? Yes, sir?
I was just wondering, when you end your role as the Doctor, how do they end your role? Like, do you just decide that you've had enough, or do they tell you that you're
You mean when they're finished with you as Doctor Who?
Yes.
In the case of everybody except one Doctor, we all asked to leave. We all said that we would. We thought we'd had enough, except the case of one who went on. And they said we think we've done enough. But in my case, I left because it was an end of an era. Barry Letts was leaving, Terence Dix, the editor, was leaving, Roger had been killed. It was such a breakup. I thought I couldn't stand starting again with a whole new lot of people, so I decided to leave.
What was your least favorite show that you made? Your least favorite show?
My least favorite show was The Planet of the Daleks. A lot of people like it very much. There were some good things in it, but nothing could be more ludicrous to me than when the world is being invaded by Daleks and there are only 3 of them coming up. And I said to the director, you know, this is absolutely ridiculous. I said, you've got all these, remember, there were all those politicians that came in their Rolls Royces, you know, for this great meeting, remember, in the House. And there were the Daleks going, and they were coming down. They had a hell of a job they were to get over the gravel because they're on wheels, you know. And there are these guys inside going, Jesus Christ. But they wouldn't go over the gravel, and there were 3 of them. And I said, you've got to have more than that. So he said, all right, well, we'll do double shots and we'll move them to other paths and move. But when they left, the director evidently had forgotten that there was a panic on. He'd forgotten the story that the Daleks were surrounding the house and were going to destroy them all. And if you remember that all the delegates all came out and said, well, cheerio, it was very nice to see you. And I think it's been a very interesting meeting, don't you? Oh, Chalmers, bring the car round here. And they were all taking their time. Nobody was hurrying at all. And there were all these guys there were moments of silliness in that which I thought were just unforgivable. So I didn't really like that one.